want to do something different, Femi, this morning in introducing you.
Let me be surprised 1 minute.
Madame, Monsieur, introduction, Madame Femi, Femi Femo Okomame. This is in tribute to President Macron for fact-checking President Trump while
do such a
on the live
job?
Telecast.
Yeah.
C'est bon.
C'est très
Femi
bon.
Femo
Very, very good.
Okomame. C'est très bon.
Monsieur Rufal.
Merci,
beaucoup.
merci, madame. Merci,
All
madame.
right. Let me tell
Continue,
you
continue.
Good morning, my friend. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Professor Killer. Good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you about what's happening around the world. Now, the world's gaze continues to hover over Ukraine 3 years since Russia's invasion. To mark the third anniversary, European leaders and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gathered in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, as a show of solidarity. And you can continue to see that type of solidarity elevated as the United Nations General Assembly passed resolutions condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine, despite US efforts to thwart it. Now, 93 countries, including Nigeria, voted in favor for this resolution. African countries, including Burkina Faso, Burundi, and Mali, and Niger joined the United States and Russia and voted against this resolution. Resolution did, in fact, pass. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has met US President Donald Trump at the White House. Now, the visit was an opportunity for Macron to remind Trump of Europe's commitment in supporting Ukraine, as has been the case since the two leaders first met in 2017. They did share another lengthy handshake like that one. Getting down to the business, though, the pair did sit down for questions from the press at the Oval Office, largely about Ukraine. Trump, who refused to refer to Putin as a dictator, did admit that getting Russia to release land it has already occupied from Ukraine would be tough. But he did say the war could end in weeks if we are smart, he said. Let's take a listen to what Trump had to say.
The purpose of our meeting today is to end another battle, a really horrible one, a war. Something that we haven't seen since the Second World War. Our focus is on achieving a ceasefire as soon as possible and ultimately a permanent peace. My meeting with President Macron today was another important step forward, and that's a very interesting and horrible situation, and that could evolve into a third world war. We're not going to let that happen.
Well, he said we're not going to let that happen. Let's hope so. Well, French President Emmanuel Macron says that peace must not mean a surrender of Ukraine. He had a lot more to say. I'm going to leave that once I go into speaking to my colleagues. But let's move on. Just take a quick sidestep to France now and the trial of a 74-year-old French former surgeon who's accused of abusing hundreds of patients, most of them children, has started in Brittany, which is in northwest France. Now, this is Jean Lescurmac, and he is accused of assaulting or raping 299 patients, the vast majority of them under 15 years old, between 1989 and 2014, mostly in Brittany. Now, the youngest of his alleged victims was aged 1 and the oldest 70. Many of the plaintiffs were allegedly abused while they were under anesthesia or recovering from surgeries in hospitals across northern France. Police were only able to identify them thanks to meticulously compiled diaries in which the accused, Lescurmac, is alleged to have logged assaults he carried out on his young patients over more than 25 years. He has actually already been in prison since 2017 for abusing 4 children, of which he was found guilty in 2020. And then finally, foreign conflict and entertainment do seem to be at loggerheads as US singer John Legend has defended his decision to perform in Rwanda as its countrymen, of course, are accused of waging war in eastern parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, John Legend said that there's really no reason why his fans should be punished for what their leaders do, and his performance was part of the Move Africa tour, an initiative by Global Citizen, which is actually set to continue in Lagos, Nigeria, here today. I don't know if you guys have tickets. I don't, but I'd love to see John Legend. So yeah, this is what we're seeing around the world. If we start, of course, in Washington, D.C. with Emmanuel Macron. As we were saying before we started here, it is quite refreshing to see somebody go and visit the president at the White House on his turf and not cower, not be intimidated. So I do think a lot of people will be commending Emmanuel Macron for his resilience.
Well, yes, I think so. I think Macron, well, let's go a bit parochial here. Macron has a bit of the Lagos influence in him.
A bit of gra-gra.
Yeah, that's his years in Lagos has formed him to say, when you're somewhere, you don't go back home to take the response. You give it to them there. You don't go thinking about it. And it is refreshing that he did not say this is the best day of my life, like a non-Lagosian president said when he went to see Trump. He stood up to say it. But the key thing here is that Trump has a view of the world, and he acts like a bully. But I want to assure our viewers and all the leaders of the world, if they can take the message, that the way to deal with bully is always to stand up to them. The same rules we had in playground is the one that continues in real life. Macron has done a favor to Europe and to humanity to show them that, look, we don't have to all kowtow to this line. We can build a bloc, we can stand up to it. And as I speak, a lot of economic institutions in Europe are sharing possible path of an alternative to America. Not forever, fascinating thought, not forever, just for this period, to say, how do we survive this? I think this is a lesson to the rest of the world. And it is important, and I say this because I know I have an unpopular view on the war, of the war in Ukraine. But for somebody like me, who has a rather unpopular view about the fact that maybe the war could have been avoided totally in the name of saving lives, it is important, however, that whilst we disagree on policies, on process, and the way we handle and evaluate things, we should not disagree on facts. Nobody's allowed to say it is country Ukraine that started the war, when we all know that was Russia that went in there. It is also important that we know that the sovereignty of states amongst people is something that we should all respect, no matter how big or small a state is.
Sure.
We know the politics is Machtpolitik, as you say in German, is something of power. But it is not enough. There's some finesse which Mr. Trump lacks. That he needs to learn to know that when you go to the world stage, you don't talk like a bully. And thank you, Macron, for standing up to correcting that.
Let me start with Macron. I'll end with John Legend and Rwanda and the political side to it. But for Trump and Macron meeting, I thought that was really great in terms of Macron being able to, despite his shaky stand with regards to his popularity in France, and perhaps this is part of his curtain call as president, because he would, in the coming elections, it's very doubtful that he would return, in fact, as leader of the party, to be fair. But one of the things I believe the key reason why he had gone was to buy, or to at least engender America's support with supporting Ukraine. We all know where Trump currently stands. He's been very vocal about it, whether through his Truth Social or when he's had opportunities for interviews, saying that they were no longer going to be sending troops or even funding to Ukraine, and even asking for mineral deposits, worth up to $500 billion from Ukraine. But here, part of the strong message that Macron took to the United States was that they needed to support Ukraine as they look for ways to get to a deal and end the war.
Right.
And that even though Europe is adamant that they're still going to continue, they needed the United States support to do this. And I thought that was a strong messaging. To what extent that Trump would take it, I don't know. Trump has proven to be a man of his own convictions, and what he thinks and what he believes is what he goes with. And he's moved away from traditional American policy, even in the way that he supported, a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. I don't know how that will pan out, but I thought it was great. In terms of an outing for Macron, great outing for him.
Definitely.
How productive or how fruitful the outcome would be, I don't think it would be. With Rwanda, very quickly, and that's why it's a big debate. It's very easy to say cancel, but there's always that conversation around, should you make a statement by being there and even the songs that you sing, and also not punish the people? Because even when we talk about sanctions, one of the things we say is that the people who suffer from these sanctions are not the leaders themselves.
Exactly.
And so sometimes you want to make a statement and not punish the people by still showing up. So I think it's a bit, it's
a sticky one, isn't it?
It's a sticky one. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer to that, and individuals have reasons for what they do.
It's a sticky one, but I think the loudest message is a boycott, and that's why kudos to Thames. Because Thames also was caught in this corner recently. She stuck her neck out. I'm not going to go to Rwanda because, see, one way or the other, it feeds into the affirmation of these people. Why do you boycott people? Because you want to send a very strong message. When the war started, why was Russia treated like a pariah? In fact, Russian owners of football team like Chelsea, I suffered it. Yeah. Chelsea got off the hands of Abramovich, which I thought was a great owner, and went off to Ted Boehly that can't even run the team properly and has made the team a shambolic team today. I mean, but you need to prove that point. Because, see, what these bullies want is attention. Attention is an oxygen for bullies. When you take the attention away from them, it makes them feel that they're not so special. And that's exactly what Monsieur Macron, my knight in the shining armor, did to Donald Trump. He told him off. He called out his lies. He confirmed to us that Europe was even paid more to the Ukrainians for this one. They don't want anything in return.
Right.
And it also confirmed the lies he was telling. Because when you say you give Ukraine over 100 billion, you forget that most of that money was channeled into American military industry like Lockheed Martin's to make this weaponry that you gave to them.
In the first place, right.
And what you just did was you took them for your stock and you paid back for restocking. So the money still came back to you either way. And he also proved Trump wrong by saying Europe is not collecting anything in return because he was trying to, the right wing, they lie a lot with misinformation. So he was trying to pass the narrative, just like it's been established that most of the things Elon Musk tweets are total lies. So if they tried to establish the fact that Europe is also loaning them, he said, no, we're doing this for our sovereignty. And they met yesterday on the 3rd anniversary of the war, and they stood as a united front. In fact, the likes of Keir Starmer surprised me. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Keir. He also said, we'll create a backstop. If we need to put boots on the ground, we'll put boots on the ground. Olaf Scholz was there. Trudeau, despite the fact that was leading, was there.
Yes.
Leaving was there. Ursula von der Leyen was there.
She was.
And they formed a very formidable front. But what did America become? America became a pariah. Do you know the Ukraine resolution yesterday in the United Nations? America did not vote in favor of Ukraine. They voted against Ukraine. They voted with Russia. Yes. You know the other countries that voted with Russia? Countries like Burkina Faso in Africa that had already gone the Russian way because they pulled out of ECOWAS, Mali, Niger, and the like.
Too.
So you can see America can't even be trusted by its ally. It's fast become a pariah. And this goes back to the 1930s. This was how the likes of the Silver Shirt started. This was how the likes of, all these rabid right-wing groups started.
Right.
Father Coughlin was big on media. For further reading and listening, you can go and listen to Rachel Maddow's Ultra about how the rise of right-wing started up in America. It's a good podcast for you to listen to.
As
and
always.
Get some real information and education and knowledge.
There is that. Well, thank you all for your great thoughts and analysis. Let's move on to our newspapers. We're staying in Nigeria for the duration of our newspaper review this morning. And let's start with This Day. This Day, of course, leads with Arise News' bombshell interview with Nasir El-Rufai. I mean, from him saying that it was President Tinubu who changed his mind about making him a minister in his cabinet and not a rejection from the National Assembly, to him accusing the president of only appointing his boys and arguing that the North won't vote for him. There was a lot happening in last night's interview, and you can, of course, watch that on the Arise News YouTube channel. On This Day's back page, though, is the Tuesday with our very own Reuben Abati column, which focuses on A Journey in Service, which is, of course, Ibrahim Babagida's autobiography. Interestingly enough, though, the column does go on to accuse the former military ruler of trying to whitewash his role in the June 12th saga. And it's one thing, you can imagine, to point fingers at Abacha, but what Dr. Reuben argues is that actually IBB was far more interested in saving his own neck, and that his June 12th story is a confession of cowardice. That's a direct quote from that back page. I'd implore you all to read it because it was quite juicy this morning. Definitely. So we're looking forward to seeing you, Dr. Reuben, even though we are definitely appreciating your presence here, Professor Killer. And if it isn't one thing, it's definitely the other, as the New Telegraph reports. As New Telegraph and the Daily Sun, actually, they both report on fuel scarcity looming, as IPMAN, which is the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, they're threatening a strike over 100 billion naira, bridging claims owed to it by its members. Owed to its members by the NMDPRA, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Now, IPMAN have given the federal government a 7-day ultimatum to pay. The Punch leads with the business of Lagos politics. The speakership crisis still going on in the Lagos State House of Assembly might be resolved soon, according to this write-up in the Punch, as the intervention of heavyweights in the APC may be heading to some form of headway. Essentially, the impeached Speaker Mudashiru Obasa and the current Speaker Mojisola Miranda may be stepping aside for another lawmaker to lead the House. The Guardian leads with prison decongestion with 53,225 pre-trial detainees languishing in prison despite the pressure on the federal government to grant pardons to politically exposed people and the attendant review of such requests. Now, a larger population of detainees that need the clemency on offer, clearly they are being ignored while more high-profile people get these types of pardons. So it is very, very interesting to see that when we're looking at people in our prisons, the focus here is that these people have not yet been convicted. And while it is not uncommon for people to be in prison on remand before their trial or during their trial, it shouldn't be to a case where there is clearly a way or a path to decongest these prisons, but that leeway is only given to so-called politically exposed people.
Well, very briefly, I talk about the prison thing just to say that I have had cause to advise a couple of presidents in this country and some ministers that it's time we build more prisons. It should be not just an infrastructural message, but also a message of justice to say, look, we're building more prisons, so it won't be an excuse that you don't have space. And especially for politically exposed people, when we build these prisons, we should put good medical facilities so some people will not need to go abroad or at home because they are ill. We need a kind of holistic view in all we do. Abati's read is a very good read, and I advise people to pick it up.
Yeah. So Dr. Abati definitely demonstrated his skills, ability as a book reviewer of many years with wealth of experience. And he starts off by talking about just even the caveat given to the book. I love that part where he said that this book is not about finding blame, inventing excuses, or whitewashing known facts, and it goes exactly to do that. I thought that was quite brilliant. And then there was another quotable quote that I saw that I wanted to mention here.
Yes.
Dancing on Delegiwa's grave and spitting on MKO Abiola's tombstone. Yes. That's what seemed to play out at the book launch in Abuja last week. And he goes on to detail. You would know that he's done an academic review of the book. So I would recommend the back page read. We didn't have the opportunity of having him on set when when this news broke, and a lot of people would want to hear or perhaps know what his insight and his analysis of this is. But let me just talk very quickly. When we keep saying prison, it's been changed to correctional service.
Well, there's
and
that
the whole
too.
idea of that is that people are meant to go in, be reformed, rehabilitated, and when they come out of the correctional service, they are able to be useful to society. Unfortunately, you can change the name of a goat, but a goat is a goat, it will still eat grass. As long as you don't change the DNA of the goat, it will continue to do exactly that. And unfortunately, the DNA of our prisons haven't changed. So even before we get to the hospitals, it's even what happens in there and fairness and equity in the justice system. But a lot to say about that.
Let me just be sarcastic a bit. But it's in this same correctional center that Evans the kidnapper is now a teacher.
So we have some good stories.
But like you guys said, there must be a great deal of prison reforms. And really, I think before we can even have prison reforms, it cascades into how you even treat people that are not in the prison in the first place. Yeah. We have a malicious way of treating each other in this country. From the high up there to the lowest low in the society. And except we change that, we cannot move forward as a society. So we need to start rethinking the way we treat people, the way politicians treat electorate, the way they lie to electorate in the first place. As regards Dr. Abati's review, yes, bang on his point as regards people trying to whitewash facts. But we must also remember, that's Babangida's side of the story. There are still many people that we should call out on, like Lasisi Olaguju asked yesterday. That Ndukai Rabo, for instance, our dear Ndukai Rabo, is a friend of the family. Who gave him that unsigned paper? We need to be able to tape that interview. We need to also be able to tape, other accounts as regards what happened around that period. There are some we know. The killings in Lagos, we can never forget that.
Right.
The killings across board, the people that suffered, we can never forget that. The role student activists, we can never forget that. The role cash activists also played. Because apart from the activists in Judah, there were a lot of cash activists.
Yeah.
Some of their names are on my lips now. We can't even
Let's not implode the world brief today.
Some of the moles that they were using, that they were even trying to put in Abiola's camp.
Right, okay, so we're out of time. But thank you so much. There's
Thank
a lot
you,
of
God.
further reading to be
There
done.
is.
Look through the papers today, and you can enlighten yourselves with that. But thank you, Adefemi, for bringing us the World Brief and, of course, analysis or review of today's newspapers.